I always like to use real-world apps where possible for these demonstrations because it's a much more practical view of how security is implemented in the real world, plus you can go and look at these things yourself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up Fiddler again. I'm going to turn off capturing because I don't want to capture any requests from the host, and you'll see here my filters aren't checked. I'm no longer filtering. What I'm going to do now is on my iPhone, which is proxying through Fiddler, is I'm going to open the IMDb app. The app looks just like this on iOS. Many of you will be familiar with the Internet Movie Database website, and they have a companion app for iOS, which I've just loaded, and it's made the requests that you see here. One thing I'll point out now is that you will see some HTTPS requests. In the next module, I'm going to talk about how to proxy HTTPS traffic, but I don't want to get into that just now. But in order to show how tokens are persisted properly in a well-designed application, I have to show you one that talks over HTTPS, because tokens are not something you send over an insecure connection. When that's the case, it poses a serious risk of an attacker hijacking the identity of the person using the app. So here's what I want to do to show you the process of logging in and getting a token on IMDb. I'm now going to sign in with IMDb. I'm entering my email address, which is indeed a legitimate address with a legitimate IMDb account, and I'm entering my password. I'm now going to log in. And here goes the request. And now the process is complete. The device has gone back to the front page and I'm now logged in. Now we can see the request to log in down here on number 32. In fact, we can see the URL is Auth, and then it actually passes my username in the URL. It's a bit unorthodox to do that, but not particularly problematic. If we go and take a look at the raw request, we'll see my password is passed in the request body. Again, terrible password, and I assure you, by the time you're viewing this, the password is now something very different. The point I'm trying to make here is that clearly there needs to be an authentication process. So obviously there's a point when we do provide credentials in the clear. Let's look at the response though, because inevitably it's the response which is going to return the token, which is then going to be persisted across authenticated requests. And if we scroll over a little bit here in the list of requests, we can see that it is application JSON. So we'll go to the JSON viewer and we can now see a token being returned. It's this one just here that starts with IMDb, but clearly it doesn't conform to any of the risky patterns we saw before. It's certainly not an enumerable integer, and it appears to be a cryptographically strong string. So we've logged on, we've received a token. We've also got an SSO token down a little bit further, and it may well be that IMDb makes use of a couple of different tokens for different purposes. Let's now do something that only an authenticated user should be able to do. I'm opening the menu and I'm going to go to my ratings. I'll scroll across a little bit. I can see a ratings request just here. And if we look at the raw request, we can see that there's an authorization header which is sending the same token that we saw earlier on. Now, of course, there are semantics in terms of how the token gets sent with the request. Is it a custom header? Is it part of a post body? Is it a cookie? Or is it even part of the authorization header? There are pros and cons and semantic arguments for and against each one of these, but certainly this implementation is one very reasonable way of approaching things. The point is, and the reason I'm showing you this now, is it's demonstrated the pattern of log in once with username and password, receive a strong token, and then make subsequent requests by sending that token back to the service and never seeing the username and password again, and also never seeing anything as easily exploitable as an enumerable ID. So this is the sort of implementation you should be looking for when you look at auth tokens in an app.